Pajarito Mesa, to the southwest of Albuquerque, has a magnificent view of the Rio Grande Valley. Until the 1930s, it was communal grazing land for the Pajarito Land Grant.
The whole Pajarito Grant was sold off to people up and down the east and west coast as an oil speculation.
25,000-acre tract was divided up into 10-acre parcels, but with no planning for providing development infrastructure. In the mid-1970s, there was only one tree.
I don't recall more than one or two people out there, I believe.
Harry Wilkes, an aeronautical engineer at Sandia Labs, had a vision of Albuquerque's west side growth being nurtured by proper planning and resulting in conservation-minded development, including model solar energy village clusters. The west side growth has actually taken place farther north, and the Mesa's only utility is a power line which cuts across the land. But as the metro area has grown, many people have been attracted to the simplicity of life lived just beyond the network of urban services.
There's a lot of creativity, you know, hats off. The people up there are really amazing in terms of what they can piece together, and, you know, they're survivors.
It's pioneering. And what if people needed to do something, they'd have that pioneer spirit and they'd work together, and there weren't any counties and there weren't any rules and regulations, and people bought their land and then they did what they wanted to do, and they helped each other. And
many Mexican immigrants began moving onto the Mesa in the early 1990s, lured by the low down payments and the easy terms. Some were tricked into believing that services were soon to follow.
People who did not know the system that we have here, and the rules and the regulations and the permits, and you got to have this permit before that permit.
And are you representing yourself here today?
One unscrupulous operator, Virgil Haverstick, sold lots that he himself was in the process of buying, representing himself as a developer who was going to see that roads, electricity, water, gas, all of that was going to happen.
O sea, Haverstick estaba haciendo eso ilegalmente en contra de las reglas de ellos, pero no.
The family of Victoria Rodriguez and several of their friends bought land from Haverstick in 1992, only to find out it could not be built on. With the help of the Mexican consulate, Sister Mary Agnes, Swap, and others, he was finally brought to court in 1996. Ironically, it was Virgil Haverstick and his false promises that managed to bring people together and open a process of dialogue about what people wanted, what were the most pressing needs, and how it might be possible to realize them.
I know that there's a lot of frustration because they have been fighting for so long for things like, you know, paved roads and trying to get just some straight answers. There are no easements, there is no water, there's no electricity, but it also presents us with this incredible opportunity to think about, you know, how do you plan as a community, how do you come together, and how do you take advantage of this situation to do things maybe better than a lot of us are doing down here in the city.
The water table on the Mesa is very deep, and there are currently only 2 wells where residents can buy tanks of water. Nonetheless, every family has had to arrive at a solution.
Se batalla mucho, como en este tiempo de calor que no puede tener uno, pues, un aire acondicionado.
For Victoria Marin and her daughter, life can be hard. Victoria's parents lived with more primitive conditions in rural Mexico, but her life, and even more so, the life of her daughter, is defined by the expectations and assumptions of urban life in the United States.
Ahí es donde llega el bus, por ejemplo, los niños de la primaria.
Kids need to get to school. You have to get to work on time. Groceries have to be gotten from the store. It is often the woman who must face the contradictions which living without basic services presents. The man goes off to work in the morning, and that can mean that there is no way to get the kids to school except by walking to where the county road begins at the very edge of the mesa.
Women shoulder a lot of the responsibility, a lot of the hardship of living on the mesa. You know, that they are the ones that have to take into consideration how to deal with not having a reliable source of energy. They're the ones cooking the meals, keeping the family clean, worrying about how to get their children to school, and perhaps have more of the burden of worrying about what to do if there's an emergency. How would you get a policeman up there, or you know, a fire truck to respond?
There's been efforts to build community, but a lot of people, just because they're tired, they're trying to survive each day, that they just kind of withdraw into their own family and just pull themselves together. There's also like an acre apart from each family in some cases. So there isn't, it's not like you're looking over the back door fence. Also, there's no community center out there. There's no little church out there. There is no gathering point. So what we've tried to do...
Sister Mary Agnes Curran first visited the Mesa in 1996 after having spent many years in Oaxaca, Mexico. She felt a calling to work with the Mexican community there. Felt that the most important thing was to get people together, at every turn to invent and reinvent community in concrete ways, to focus attention on the problems of daily life as well as the great issues. She encouraged small groups of women to get together for prayers and reflection.
Oh Señor y Madre mía, por encima de tu dolor, sientes una gran esperanza.
Several Canosian sisters, originally from Chihuahua, Mexico, have encouraged the women to continue with their prayer meetings.
I got a brother.
You got a brother? And he's got a sister.
My brother got a sister.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And you've got a brother, it's it?
His name is George.
George.
George in English, but in Spanish,
The children speak English at school and often among themselves, but learning a new language is much more difficult for their parents. Sister Mary Agnes sought out volunteers to give English lessons to small groups.
It looks like it's kind of a study in adjectives. Good, bad, new, old, lazy, ugly, pretty. O niña.
Niño or niña.
Exactly. The child can be either a boy or a girl. Un niño o una niña. Boy. Muchacho.
Well, community is about bringing people together and caring about one another. They're caring about, my children have water, but the neighbors have water too, and those neighbors have water. And that if my children have electricity, that every child should have electricity in the Albuquerque area. Bringing people together and seeing that everybody gets their basic rights. Basic rights.
El mundo sabrá que por herencia
Life on the Mesa has a hard edge. Finding solutions to basic survival problems has been a prerequisite for each family which wishes to continue living there. But the search for broader solutions to common problems can only emerge through dialogue and a collective persistence.
It doesn't have nothing to do with
And we did that survey with Energía Total times ago.
So we were able to get some ongoing dialogue, monthly dialogue with the county commission. And I think there was a sense of hope, because back in early 1996, people were being threatened to being evicted from the Mesa by the county. That isn't happening.
At first, the residents were considered non-existent, and the road were unofficial trails at best. Their lots were political subdivisions, not a piece of land where you could put a trailer or build a house. But the county planning department has recently conducted an aerial survey with the objective of providing the basis for a map which an ambulance could use if needed, or the police.
Mapped out thousands and thousands of subdivisions with the Bernalillo County Assessor's Office. But this kind of raises a unique situation out here in the Pajarito area, because it's 36 square miles. The dwellings are far apart. Identifying them is a problem. Recently we've done a point coverage, and we've actually identified about 280 structures that could possibly be dwellings.
The county commissioner for the South Valley, Steve Gallegos, has responded to continued petitioning by the Mesa. He has called for public hearings on the problems which bring the residents together with different agencies affected by their demands.
That Saavedra is right here. And if we could go, the bus is already an extension right here, and we have easements or knowledge to right here, and these people right here is able to give her easements 10 acres.
School buses and emergency services have been defined by the county commissioners as priority concerns, and that has brought the focus to bear on roads, and that has raised the question of easements, and that means reviewing the land ownership situation, which dates back to the selling off of land in the 1930s as an investment in an oil exploration scheme.
There was no survey stakes, meets and bounds, in other words. So it was in that context that this whole 25,000 acres was subdivided and sold off. And I think the part that you don't see colored in probably were those parts were owned by people out of state.
We've gone through tons of documents of parcels out in the area, warranty deeds, real estate contracts.
I really think that the larger issue for the Mesa is going to be the greater politics of the city of Albuquerque and how Albuquerque wants to grow. And depending on how the politics go, if we look more into manners of controlled.
And the future is going to depend on the community that has emerged in this struggle, the residents of Pajarito Mesa themselves.
It's so hard to find my way. Now that I'm all on my own. I saw you just the other day. My, how you have grown. But cast my memory back to Lord. Sometimes I'm overcome just thinking about it.